In a stunning and unprecedented move, the Supreme Court struck down President Trump's sweeping new tariffs, a decision that few saw coming and that immediately captured the nation's attention. The verdict sent shockwaves through both Washington and Wall Street, leaving lawmakers, investors, and business leaders scrambling to understand the full implications. The decision marks a sharp and unexpected break from the court's previous deference to presidential emergency powers, especially on matters of trade and national security, where the executive branch has long enjoyed broad authority. For months, lower court battles set the stage for this moment, with legal experts and pundits debating the outcome, but few expected such a decisive and clear rebuke from the justices at the nation's highest court. The ruling signals a new willingness by the judiciary to check presidential authority, especially when executive actions carry massive economic consequences that ripple through every sector of society. The tariffs, which were central to Trump's America First agenda and enacted under the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, have now been dismantled, upending a key pillar of the administration's trade policy. This verdict raises urgent and complex questions. What happens to the billions already collected in tariffs? How will businesses, both large and small, adapt to this sudden change in the economic landscape? What tools remain for the administration's protectionist goals, and how will future presidents navigate the new limits on their power? For everyday Americans, the impact will be real and immediate. Tariffs have shaped prices on everything from cars to groceries, affecting household budgets and the cost of living. Many small businesses and workers now face a period of uncertainty as they adjust to new rules and shifting market conditions. The court's decision resets the nation's trade policy and injects uncertainty, but it may also pave the way for a more stable and predictable economic future. As we unpack this historic ruling, we'll see how it redraws the lines of power in Washington and affects every consumer and worker across the country, shaping the nation's economic destiny for years to come. To fully grasp the Supreme Court's decision on Trump's sweeping tariffs, we first need to look at the motivations and context behind his actions. Understanding why Trump imposed these tariffs is key to understanding the controversy that followed. He believed the U.S. was being taken advantage of by foreign competitors, and that drastic action was needed. In his second term, Trump doubled down on his America First agenda, blaming decades of unfair trade deals for the loss of millions of manufacturing jobs and a ballooning trade deficit that he argued threatened American prosperity. His answer was a bold move: unprecedented tariffs, justified by invoking the International Economic Emergency Powers Act. This law was originally designed for targeted sanctions, not sweeping changes to trade policy, making his approach highly controversial. Trump declared national emergencies over immigration, drugs, and the trade deficit, using IEPA to levy tariffs on nearly all imports, a move that stunned both allies and rivals. The average tariff rate soared from 2% to over 17%, aiming to force global supply chains away from China, protect American jobs, and generate a staggering $1.7 trillion in revenue for the government. Supporters saw this as a necessary shock to fix a broken system, arguing that short-term pain and higher prices would ultimately rebuild American industry and restore economic independence. Critics, however, warned it was a risky, unilateral move that bypassed Congress, risked global retaliation, and could spark a damaging trade war with unpredictable consequences. The legal and economic stakes were enormous, setting the stage for a historic legal showdown that would test the limits of presidential power and reshape America's role in the global economy. Trump's use of IEPA for tariffs triggered immediate lawsuits from businesses, arguing he'd overstepped constitutional bounds. Courts agreed. Both the U.S. Court of International Trade and a federal district court ruled the tariffs illegal, saying only Congress can levy taxes and regulate commerce. Despite these rulings, the tariffs stayed in place as the administration appealed, forcing businesses to keep paying. The legal fight escalated to a federal appeals court, which again sided with the challengers, setting up a Supreme Court showdown. Billions hung in the balance, and the case became a defining test of executive power versus legislative authority. The stage was set for the highest court to decide the fate of Trump's trade war. The Supreme Court's verdict: the president cannot use IEPA as a blank check to impose sweeping tariffs for general economic purposes. The majority opinion drew a clear line. Congress, not the president, controls taxes and trade policy. The justices warned that allowing emergency declarations to justify broad tariffs would erase Congress's constitutional role. Chronic economic issues like trade deficits, they ruled, aren't the sudden crises IEEPA was meant to address. This decision is a major check on the growth of presidential power, especially when it impacts the entire economy. For Trump, it's a significant defeat, dismantling a core pillar of his economic agenda. The ruling leaves other, more targeted tariffs intact, but wipes out over 70% of the new tariffs imposed in 2025. The White House now faces the challenge of rethinking its trade strategy without its most powerful tool. The Supreme Court's decision will reshape the U.S. economy and your wallet. This ruling isn't just a headline, it's a turning point that will impact how much you pay for everyday goods, how businesses operate, and even how the government manages its finances. The Treasury must now refund tens of billions in tariffs collected from businesses, a massive logistical and fiscal challenge. Processing these refunds will require coordination across agencies and could take months to fully implement. Companies will get a cash infusion, boosting profits and possibly stock prices, but must quickly adapt their supply chains and pricing. Some firms may reinvest these funds into expansion or hiring, while others might pass savings along to customers. Don't expect prices to drop overnight. Tariff costs are baked into current inventory, and it'll take time for savings to reach consumers. Over the coming months, as new shipments arrive, you may start to notice lower prices on certain goods. The bigger benefit: less inflationary pressure and more economic stability as uncertainty fades. Lower input costs can help slow price increases, making it easier for families to budget and plan ahead. Economists project that removing the tariffs could boost U.S. GDP by $95 billion annually and cut the average tariff rate by more than half. This could mean stronger growth and more opportunities for American workers and businesses. Manufacturers will see lower costs, and a wider variety of goods will become more affordable in the long run. This could also encourage innovation and competition, benefiting consumers with better choices. The transition will be bumpy, but the long-term outlook is brighter with the tariffs gone. Businesses and consumers alike will need to adjust, but the overall direction is positive. The court's decision paves the way for a less inflationary, more globally integrated economy. American companies can compete more freely on the world stage, and global supply chains may become more efficient. For consumers and businesses alike, the ripple effects will be felt for years to come. Whether you're shopping for groceries or running a company, this decision marks a new chapter for the U.S. economy. What if the court had upheld Trump's tariffs? The U.S. would face a future of permanent high tariffs and expanded presidential power. Businesses would lock in long-term investments, making it nearly impossible for future presidents to reverse course without major disruption. A pro-Trump ruling would set a precedent. Any president could impose sweeping tariffs, or even new taxes by declaring an emergency, bypassing Congress. This could open the door to unilateral carbon taxes or digital levies, fundamentally altering the balance of power. For consumers, higher prices would become the norm, acting as a constant tax on families and businesses. The U.S. would risk global retaliation and a cycle of escalating trade wars, harming growth and competitiveness. The Supreme Court's decision steered the country away from this path, reaffirming Congress's central role in trade. The Supreme Court's ruling closes one chapter but opens another. What will the White House do now? Trump's team is scrambling for alternatives, eyeing older trade laws for short-term fixes. Section 122 of the Trade Act allows a temporary 15% tariff for 150 days, if there's a serious balance of payments deficit, a quick but limited option. After that, Section 301 could be used for targeted tariffs against unfair trade practices, but it's slower and less sweeping than IEEPA. The real long-term solution? Working with Congress, though bipartisan support for high tariffs is lacking. The court's decision forces the tariff debate back into the political arena, where it belongs. The future of U.S. trade policy will now be shaped by lawmakers, not unilateral executive action. The balance of power has shifted, and the next moves will define America's economic direction.